Hey everyone, welcome to the party. This is Sam Ekstrom on the Minnesota Football Party. Should the Vikings have ponied up for Odell Beckham Jr.? We answer that and other fan questions on today's show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome in another Mailbag Wednesday on the Minnesota Football Party. I'm Sam Ekstrom, at Sam Ekstrom on Twitter, covering the Vikings here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. And we're joined by Reggie Wilson, the Kare 11 sports director and anchor. He joins us every Wednesday and Friday. Good to have Reggie on the show, as well as Luke Inman. He's at Luke_Spinman, the resident draft aficionado. Check out his newsletter, NFL Draft Buzz, LockedOnPodcast.com/newsletters to subscribe for free. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more by going to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And you can also go to YouTube, Locked On Sports Minnesota, or wherever you get your podcasts and find all of our programming here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Good morning, gentlemen. I know we're all a little bleary-eyed. We all stayed up past midnight to watch the Wolves collapse last night. We're not going to talk about that. We're not. Don't do it. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to talk.
I just got to say about the. Okay. No, I'm going to let it go.
I'm going to let it go. Button. I've got the mute button. I'm going to Tony Reali you. I actually do have a mute button, by the way. So here's the question I want to get into first. Odell Beckham Jr. is going to play in purple, but it's not going to be for the Vikings. It's going to be for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the price tag seems steep. $15 million with $3 million possibly in incentives. But the Ravens used void years. The Ravens spread this thing out where there's a bunch of debt. It's just like the Kirk deal. Bunch of dead cap down the road. But cap hit this year, $3.9 million and change. So considering the relationship with KOC that Odell Beckham had, considering the absence of Adam Thielen, and considering Kwesi's love of void years, Reggie, is that a contract that the Vikings should have taken on for OBJ?
No. I mean, they should have found maybe like another way to make it work, which, you know, that's fine. You're already about to eat so many void years with Kirk Cousins. And I think the problem is with the void years, it just like continues to kick things down the road. And it affects, you know, I know you can just manipulate the cap so many different ways, but after a while, it's like, okay, how many void years are you going to schedule before it just starts to affect like, hey, I can't sign this player, I can't sign that player because of all these void years. I was talking to one of my friends who is the Cincinnati Bengals NFL Nation reporter for ESPN, Ben Baby, and he was saying that he just thinks how the Vikings do their contracts are so interesting because they do like to play with those void years. He was like, the Bengals, they don't want to do that. Call them cheap, you know, call them whatever you want. They are kind of cheap. I've been there, so I understand. But they don't believe in doing all the void years and all that stuff. Like the contracts that you see are the contracts that you get. When they had AJ Green, Andy Dalton, those guys were like locked into their contracts. Even though the money wasn't fully guaranteed anymore, they still paid them what the contract terms were because they made it friendly for them so that they weren't hamstrung by the contract over the life of the deal. And so Andy got to play out all of his years. AJ got to play out all of his years. And when they were able to make a clean break, they didn't owe the player anything. And they didn't have any money counting against the cap. And so Odell is a really good player. It would have been great to have him up here in Minnesota to cover him. Sam and I would have been talking to him all the time in the locker room. Would have been great. But just considering where they are, yeah, it's like a $1 million base salary. Most of it was in like signing bonuses and all that stuff. With incentives, could get up to 18 mil. But the void years, you just can't keep doing that and expect to be able to maximize your cap.
Instant gratification, though. You can get all these sweet players, and it only costs you this much. You just have, it's like a mortgage, right? You can get this house back in 2008, and your payment's going to be this, but your interest is going to be this. Luke Inman, your thoughts?
That fun credit card, right? When you get it, right? Like, oh, I can just go on a little shopping spree, no problem. All right, yeah. All right, I'll kick the can down the road, and I'll cross that bridge when we get there. But Reggie's right. I mean, he hit it on the head. We're in year 2 of Kwesi now. Clearly, there's a blueprint, and if you want to build a Super Bowl window and have that 3, maybe 4 years at most where you can really go for a Lombardi trophy, eventually, beforehand, you got to bite the bullet somewhere, and you got to commit. You can't start out by going a little cheap in the first and second wave of free agency, but then all of a sudden turn around and go and pay a guy like OBJ 18 mil. And I'm with you guys. I love OBJ. OBJ in his prime was outstanding. He hasn't played a healthy 16 or 17 game season in 4 years. He hasn't had a 1,000-yard season in almost 5 seasons as well. So I'm not sure he's still quite the same player that the name brand value gives you. And I'm all for fill some of these big holes before you get to the draft so you can have that BPA mindset. I just don't think kicking the can down the road, like Reggie said, you're already paying Kirk $28 million. I'm not sure how they bring in a different quarterback outside of a rookie next year, knowing that you got to pay Kirk $28 million, but kicking that can down the road is just no good. And I just don't think it does you any favors this year when you look at, again, just the grand scheme of what Kwesi wants to do here, not just in year 2, but look at year 3, year 4, year 5. This OBJ signing, I don't think would have helped that. The bigger question I have, it's funny for being a Minnesota Vikings podcast and show, us 3 right here about 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, we had a pretty in-depth conversation about Lamar Jackson. Will they or won't they? Will he stay in Baltimore? Had he played his last game for the Ravens? Do you think this signing pretty much puts the writing on the wall? I'm curious in your guys' opinion. What percentage chance do you think Lamar is back in Baltimore now that you've seen this OBJ signing?
I wonder if it's getting more likely that he stays.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If it's like maybe a 1-year deal, maybe he just rides out this tag here for a year, maybe 2 years, and then he goes and gets the bag, something like that. Maybe they try to go for a Super Bowl with OBJ now, and Lamar just plays on this tag. I think it's at like a, I was in, maybe 10% chance he stays 2 months ago. Now I'm saying 10% chance he's playing anywhere but Baltimore. That's what I would put it at. I'm curious your guys' opinion, though.
Reggie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's 100% chance he's back in Baltimore. I never took it seriously that he was going to leave. Like, I never thought that he was going to leave. I thought that if they were going to let him test the waters, if someone wanted to sign him to some type of offer sheet, I thought maybe a team like the Colts made sense, just because staying at 4, you may not get the guy that you really, really were hot on, and Lamar Jackson is better than any quarterback coming out in the draft. And so I thought maybe they would try to, put a contract out there, and then in the whole like Baltimore, Indianapolis grudge match, revenge wars or whatever you want to call it, the Ravens just come through and say, "Oh, that's a nice contract you got for Lamar there. Yeah, we can do that. We'll take him back." Like, I never thought that Lamar was legit going to leave. So and now, he's FaceTiming Odell. They look happy together. I still think that it's a 100% chance that he comes back to Baltimore.
Last thing, too, kicking the can down the road is what got Rick Spielman into a lot of trouble near the end. And I think job security, especially for these GMs, is so important, because when you feel the heat every offseason, like it's do or die now, you make some really poor decisions at the expense of the future, just to make sure, you know, you're holding on to that job security this year and staying competitive. And that's what got Rick Spielman into a lot of trouble those last 2-3 years. When you go back and look at the deals that he was dishing out to guys like Anthony Barr and Everson Griffin, and you go up and down the roster, there were some questionable moves there that really obviously didn't pan out in the end anyways, but really gave Kwesi a huge mess that he inherited, that he's still trying to clean up the pieces, and he doesn't want to go back on that route. And handing out void years like the OBJ deal, the way that's structured, is not the way he wants to do business. I can't foresee him handing out those kind of deals and, again, just kicking the can down the road. It's going to be one and done, one time only with Kirk Cousins, I think, next year, shelling out that $28 million. Then I don't think you'll see those deals too often in the future. That's just my prediction.
That's an interesting take, Luke, because you're right. He did inherit a financial situation that was super bogged down, and then the void years that he has handed out, and it wasn't just Kirk, it was, to a smaller extent, Patrick Peterson had void years. I think Jesse Davis had like a weird void year, but he did that because the Vikings had so little cap space to work with because of the Rick Spielman decisions earlier. So that is a really good point, Luke. And honestly, I wouldn't mind the OBJ void years if they didn't have already 28 million dead for Kirk. Like, that is already such a prohibitive number that I don't want to make that worse. I'd like to keep the flexibility open a little bit going forward. Should the Vikings get in on the trade market with some of these rookie contract guys asking for trades? We'll see about that. But first, let me tell you that this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook. It's the official sports betting partner of Locked On. New customers can get a no-sweat first bet at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. And there are so many ways to wager. NBA play-in/playoffs, NHL playoffs coming up as well. Every league, every line, I'm telling you, it's a lot of fun. So many ways to wager, and the same game parlays where you make several bets within the same game. Those are a lot of fun with some big potential payouts. New customers, no sweat first bet, up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Make every moment more at FanDuel. Well, there's also headlines about trade requests. Greg Newsome, Cleveland Browns, two years in the league, wants to be traded. Jeffrey Okudah was traded to the Atlanta Falcons. That's a first-round pick, number 3 overall. Devin White, heading into his 5th year, he wants to be traded from the Bucs. So let's lump all this together. First of all, Okudah getting dealt for a 5th-round pick going to the Falcons. Should the Vikings be in on some of these possible, if the price is that, should they be considering trying to get in the action with some of these possible guys that want to be traded? Luke Inman, what do you think?
Yeah, I talked to Lions insider Jeff Risdon just yesterday when this move went down. I said, what's the deal with Okudah, man? Number 3 overall pick. He said he just can't stay healthy. And sometimes a change of scenery for both parties is really what's needed. And I look at, you know, the compensation or lack thereof, a 5th-round pick, just a 3rd overall pick 3 years ago. Still a lot of upside there. And again, maybe a change of scenery, a new defensive scheme, a new locker room. Just again, just hitting the reset button, I think, can do wonders. Doesn't always pan out. Otherwise, everybody would do it, and they would go a lot higher than a 5th-round pick. But I look at some of even the veteran trades out there once in a while. What did DeAndre Hopkins go for like 2 years ago? Like a 3rd and a 5th? I'm sitting there scratching my head. What players are you going to be able to get in the draft? And you know I'm a huge draft guy, guys. And I'm all for keep as many picks as you can. Build your team through the draft, not free agency. That's clearly the blueprint when you look at the most successful teams the last 15, 20 years. But who are you going to get in the draft with your 3rd and 5th round pick that comes close to the, you know, star power and production that a guy like DeAndre Hopkins gives you? So I would be, if I was a GM, on the phone night and day trying to call up these teams, seeing, you know, what kind of bargain bin deals I can get for some day 3 picks. Now, a lot of times too, there's cap constraints. You know, Okudah's on a rookie deal, so not too big of a deal. I know sometimes with the vets, it's more about the money. Can you take on Dalvin Cook's $14.5 million salary? I'm not sure. But yeah, Jeff Okudah for a 5th-round pick, man, especially given the needs the Vikings have. Maybe it was just one of these years again where I'm not dishing out big deals to OBJ and kicking the can down the road. And I also don't have enough draft ammo as is, just knowing how many draft picks they're already missing, even though it's just a 5th, to start shelling out some draft picks as well. But yeah, tough to kind of wrap your head around why the Vikings wouldn't be in on a move like that.
Yeah, and it's right up Kwesi's alley, finding high draft picks on rookie deals. That's what he did all last year. And I think I said that Okudah's played 2 years. He actually has played 3. So he's got 2 years left on that rookie deal, potentially with the 5th-year option, or 1 year if there is no 5th-year option. Yeah, and Reg, after that OBJ conversation, if price is a concern, trading day 3 picks for guys on rookie deals, the price is right with those kind of acquisitions. What do you think about getting in on the trade market here with some of these disgruntled players?
I think it makes sense in theory, but my thing is they already are strapped for cash. And so I get it. These rookie deals are, you know, very team friendly, and they really can help. And, you know, Luke mentioned the Hockenson deal. They extend the 5th-year option and continue to get a premium player on the cheap, if you will. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you give up these draft picks, or you give up, you know, day 2, day 3 picks to get somebody like that. First off, I thought it was crazy that Jeff Okudah got traded for, I think I tweeted, he got traded for a bag of Werthers. Like, they were just like, you know what? It's fine. It seemed kind of cocky, honestly. Some of the moves that the Lions have made this offseason have seemed kind of cocky. Like, you get rid of Jamar Williams, who led the team in touchdowns last year, and you replace him with David Montgomery, and you trade away one of your 1st-round picks. I know he wasn't a pick of Brad Holmes and Dan the Man, but he's a guy that still has a lot of potential as a former 1st-round pick. You gave him away for practically nothing. And it's like, look, I understand you feel like you're an up-and-coming team and all that goodness, but you haven't done anything yet. And the last I checked, you're still the Lions. And so you kind of have to be a little bit humble, you know, because the NFL and the parity can come really quick. And so I just thought that was really interesting, just giving them away to the Falcons. Like, here you go. We don't want this guy anymore. We don't see any value for him.
To Reggie's point, too, they needed cornerback early in the draft before this trade, before they traded one of their starting cornerbacks.
Dude, their defense was slaw last year.
That's what I'm saying. So now all of a sudden, and granted, it's a loaded cornerback class, and granted, the Lions have a plethora of early round picks, so they could go cornerback 2 of their first 3 picks and come out looking just fine. But yeah, I'm with you, Reg. Like, kind of a head-scratching move for sure, just given how bad they looked. And again, how young he was in his career, entering year 3 now, and again, just kind of been inconsistent due to injuries more than anything else.
And finding the money. I think that was my point, Sam. Finding the money the Vikings need to be able to make some of these trades happen. I mean, Devin White wants a contract extension, and he is due for one. He's been one of the best young players in the league. That 2019 LSU class just continues to just give and give and give to the league. And not even just the 2019 class, but I guess just the 2019 team. Like, that team itself just continues to just blossom and blossom and blossom in the league. And so he's looking for a big payday. Okudah, I'm sure, is going to be looking to get paid soon. He's going to be coming up on that 5th-year option. And so after a while, it's like, okay, how much money can you know, when you get a guy on a rookie deal in the earlier part of the deal, it's helpful because you're like, okay, we can manage this money. But then, you know, you start trading for all these guys that are in their 3rd, 4th, you know, approaching that 5th year. Now you're going to have some decisions to make. And we already talked about how strapped they are for cash. Like, they still need to make some moves happen to try to sign the draft picks that they're going to have in a few weeks.
Right.
So I think that's the thing for me. Like, yeah, it makes sense to try to trade for some people, especially if these teams like the Lions are just going to give away a guy that you had a premium draft pick on. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how much money are you able to work with to be able to make this work? You can't continue to kick money down the road because at a certain point, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, if you want to have, you know, some fun moves like this every once in a while, eventually you have to bite the bullet first and foremost and hit the reset button with your cap and clear everything out. And that's, I think, what Kwesi's doing right now in year 2.
Yeah, Devin White is interesting because, I mean, first of all, he's expensive. I mean, you're not getting any cheap years because he's either $11 million in the 5th-year option or it's a big contract extension. But he's an inside linebacker who is not great in pass coverage, but he does break up a lot of passes, but he gives up a lot of receptions. He's not good in run defense, but he is good at pressuring. Like, he's the rare inside linebacker who's a real pass rushing threat. He's unique, certainly, but I don't know if you want to make a commitment there to Devin White.
And Sam, you know, just to kind of try to compare apples to apples, I mean, the Bears traded Roquan Smith to the Ravens for what? A 2 and a 5, I believe, a 2nd and a 5th round pick. And then Roquan just got the bag at the beginning of this year, I think like a 5-year, $100 million contract extension, making him one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid linebacker in the NFL. So I don't know if Devin White's quite on that level, but he's not far off if he's not. And I just wonder how much, again, that would cost, not just this year, but down the road, plus the draft compensation as well. So if a deal does get done, if he does get moved, very interested to see what all that looks like, just top to bottom on both ends.
Yeah, the one that I'd be interested in kind of following is Greg Newsome, because that's someone you get multiple years, rookie contract. He was pretty decent his first 2 years, first round pick. Cleveland's going to want something for him, so you would have to pay accordingly. Thanks to Nathan Baker for that question. In closing, a question from Nick Blade. If the Vikings let Dalvin Cook walk, could we see an increase in work for Kene Nwangwu besides special teams? I like the question. I think it comes down to where Ty Chandler is in the pecking order, because presumably Alexander Mattison is your pseudo number 1 back without Cook. Then who's number 2? I kind of think Chandler. I just think that Chandler is a more traditional back. Nwangwu maybe doesn't quite have the strength of a traditional back. He's more of a pass catching threat, gadget player. But I don't know. What do you guys think, Reggie?
Yeah, I would think more Ty Chandler as well, just because like when Nwangwu has been in there, it's been a mixed bag. And look, he has that straight line speed, which is why he's been so effective on kick returns. And in my mind, he seems more like a third down back, with Mattison kind of, like you said, being that pseudo one, if that's how it ends up. And then Chandler, who showed flashes last year, being that other guy that can help shoulder the load. Like, I can see those two. And Chandler does have that breakaway speed as well. Not maybe like Nwangwu does, but you know, it's as you say, seems like he is more of the traditional guy, and maybe like Nwangwu could be that third down specialist. You know, you can get him in space and watch him work, but running in between the tackles, haven't seen much. Not saying that he can't develop into what the Vikings need, but I don't know that they are calling on him to be that type of a guy.
We sat here about a month before the season started, and we all kind of gave our, not bold predictions, but just what we wanted to see. Sam, you were banging the table, even with Dalvin Cook on the roster, saying, I want more Kene. Give me more Kene. What happens? He goes from 13 touches to 9 rushes last year. And I get it. You got Dalvin and Mattison. It's tough to, you know, leapfrog any of those guys for sure. I get it. But just not a lot of touches, not a lot of opportunities to truly see what he's got. I mean, we don't even have a small sample size. We got nothing. And I'm with Reggie. Like, we kind of understand his scouting profile now. He's a straight line speed guy. But one of the best things I think about a 3-man rotation is, as a coach, you get the best of both worlds as far as game planning goes. All right, I got the speedster, straight line speed guy, maybe more of a passing down, third down option like Reggie mentioned in Kene. I got the bruiser in between the tackles and Alexander Madison, the veteran who I know I can count on if I need to give 15, 18 carries to and grind out a defense. And then Ty Chandler seems to kind of be a little bit more of the wild card, but we do know that he comes from this regime. We know KOC handpicked this guy. Even with a plethora of running backs already on the roster, he still went and used a day 3 pick on Ty Chandler. So again, kind of the best of both worlds as a coach to say, what do I want to do and how do I want to maximize these guys' specific skill sets? So I think they all bring a little bit something different to the table. But I, for one, especially if Dalvin's not here, if Kene's not getting some more touches, at least 3, 4, 5 a game, I would be pretty disappointed, to be honest, because I think there is something there, especially from what we've seen just off special teams alone.
Yeah, and this was my gripe with Mike Boone. Like, someone that athletic, that shifty, you should be able to use him more than you do. And even if Kene is not perfect vision-wise, or he's not as skilled as Dalvin Cook at like moving around blockers and moving laterally, I still think that you need to try to tap into that athleticism. And I will confess, the coaches might know a little more than I do. Maybe they have the evaluation down pat and they think they know who this guy is. But I still think that you should keep your options open if you're going to have a running back rotation. Thanks for the questions, everybody. We appreciate them every week, doing our mailbag show with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman. Tomorrow, the Minnesota Football Party returns with Luke Braun, Arif Hassan, Ron Johnson appears. I'm out. Luke Inman's running the show tomorrow, which means I'm traveling, which means the return of unhinged airport hot takes from me. So I can't wait for that. Luke, you're going to get it tomorrow. I'm going to send in some crazy nonsense. Reggie, what do you got going on at Kare tonight?
Oh, man, we are keeping an eye on this Timberwolves play-in situation. I regrettably have to talk about it tonight, so there's that. Yeah. Twins avoided their 3-game losing streak with that ridiculous walk-off yesterday. So we'll see what they got today. And we're just keeping it rolling, man. We'll have a action-packed show on Friday for the Sports Extra, just talking about everything happened. This is a very busy time in Minnesota sports, so very fun time to be a fan, without all the heartbreak and stuff.
Then the Wild's division title hopes died as well yesterday, but that's all right. They'll be in the playoffs. They'll actually get a series. Wolves, maybe not. At Reggie Wilson TV on Twitter, at Luke_Spinman. Follow him on Twitter. I'm at Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on the Minnesota Football Party.
Be blessed. Spread love.